not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 8 News Now or Nexstar Media Group.
And you would vote again to fire Dr. Jara?
First thing on the agenda.
Is my opinion more important than yours? Can I hear you out?
This week on Politics Now, from school violence to graduation rates, we speak with candidates in one of the most hotly contested Clark County School Board races this year. Aiming for qualified candidates, a group of former CCSD trustees describe their mission to shape the school board. Plus, Republican Senate candidates Sam Brown and Adam Laxalt debate for the first time.
From 8 News Now, this is Politics Now.
Thank you for joining us here on Politics Now. I'm John Langler. 3 members of the Clark County School Board. Those seats are up for grabs this year. The seats are for President Irene Cepeda, Linda Cavazos, and Danielle Ford. All 3 were at the center of the superintendent being fired, then rehired last year. So this week we are digging into those races, and we start with Trustee Ford and what happened with the superintendent. What was it that motivated you to motivate the maybe other trustees, but specifically you, to terminate his contract?
Big picture,
No, specifically. I'm trying to get an idea. Maybe some parents already know this, but like specifically, what is it about his time in office and his work that encouraged you to terminate his contract, to vote that way?
The thing that I put on the record is that I have knowledge, the board has knowledge of ways that he's treated his cabinet and their claims of him harassing, bullying, intimidating, threatening, and extorting them. And the way that we did that vote, per his contract, he can be terminated for convenience, which just means that the board doesn't all have to come up with one reason and prove it to be a reason for cause.
Anyone who has watched school board meetings for the last several years will have seen disputes, somewhat vicious ones, I think, on the school board dais during meetings, name calling in public. And do you believe that decorum by yourself and other board members is the best way to handle the education at the heart of what you're elected to work on and do?
Sure, I've heard that argument a bunch, and those concerns about the way that certain board members, I would assume myself included in that one, acts on the dais. And while I agree with that to an extent, I believe that my constituents trust that I'm doing what I feel is right. And a lot of what I do or say on the dais is based on things that I've seen and experienced behind the scenes. So there are trustees that are bullies, right? Bullies. And one of the situations in which I called someone a name, and that name was a phony baloney, okay? What they didn't see was her leaning behind another trustee, calling me names, while I'm trying to move progress forward and get a plan together.
What can you do if you're reelected as a board member to change discipline, to improve discipline, to do something about treating students with respect and compassion if they do something wrong, but at the same time protecting them?
We need to just bring in groups and organizations who understand our community and who want to work with the schools. We should be allowing principals to find out who those people are, get them, background checked, allowed to come into the schools and do it. We don't. We're not letting people into our schools to help, because it's either adopt this, national expensive curriculum, professional development that's going to tell you things to say, or bring people from other districts to do it, instead of just saying like, hey, this is all hands on deck. We need the community to help and figure this out. We just need to trust our principals and our teachers and let them do the job that they're experts at. Broadly
speaking, if you're reelected, the biggest issue at Clark County School District that you want to address right away?
It's teacher retention and it's staff retention. It's not the amount of teachers. It's not. I'm frustrated that the only metric that we're even able to evaluate is how many new teachers we get. Well, new teachers are big business. New teachers cost a lot to recruit, cost a lot to train. We don't have the time to do that, but we still have a lot of teachers. We talk about the shortage, but we're not talking about the 16,000, 17,000 teachers that we already have. So we should be doing everything to retain them before recruiting. And if it was up to me, I would be doing some sort of campaign like please stay, please come back, can we give you a re-signing bonus similar to the military, you know, sign a 4-year contract, we'll give you a bonus every single year of that.
And you would vote again to fire Dr. Jara?
First thing on the agenda.
Even despite the fact that there's still like ongoing litigation with Dr. Jara? I mean, the school district is still no?
There's not.
The $2.6 million that hasn't been settled yet?
That's lingering, but it's been proven that nothing happened. It's been proven, I can't say exactly how, that he has 0 claims and that it was all nonsense.
9 people are challenging Ford for her District F seat. That includes former Nevada Assemblywoman Irene Bustamante Adams. I asked her why she's running and the change that she wants at CCSD. What do you think Clark County School District and the board needs the most right now?
I've heard repeatedly, and it's my personal opinion too, I think the restoration of professionalism and trust is at the top of the food chain. I met recently with one of the principals in the school district, and I think he put it best. The kids are watching us. They're watching the leaders, and so we have to be role models at every level. And so I would say the decorum, the civility, is definitely at the top of the list.
The incumbent in District F is Danielle Ford, who was very vocal during that experience. She's been very vocal on the school board from the beginning of her time serving on with the Board of Trustees. What is it about her performance and her actions on the Board of Trustees that motivated you perhaps to run for this position? Or was there anything?
I would say obviously the professionalism and the code of conduct for how you treat your fellow colleagues did play a role into it. But I've had a passion to serve in public service ever since exiting the legislature, and I've volunteered and continue to volunteer, and so I have an inclination to want to serve in public service.
The issue of violence on campus, not only among students, but unfortunately against teachers. Saw the horrible situation at El Dorado High School. The district had tried restorative justice as sort of an overarching method within the district. There's a bit of change to that now. What do you think is the best way to handle violence and discipline within the district?
I think it has to be a comprehensive approach. So I do believe in no tolerance, and I also believe in restorative justice. How can you do both? I think that we're not utilizing everything that we have as far as a tool and a resource here in the community, and what I mean by that is students and teachers need to feel safe. But then what's going on with the student, what's going on with the family that have created the actions? There are tools like the Harbor where we do a wraparound for the entire child and the family to figure out and dig deep. A lot of the students are dealing with issues at home. They're dealing with homelessness. They're dealing with being sexually assaulted, unfortunately, in their own household. What's going on? How do we help the parents? What kind of resources can we give that individual? Is it food insecurity? And so it has to be comprehensive. Should
CCSD be broken up?
I think that it's yes, a conversation on the table. How we do it matters. It's hard to steer the ship in CCSD. It's like moving the Titanic, right? Yeah. And so you need to figure that out. I don't know the answer yet, but I know that we could have conversations to make sure that there's access and equity for the students and for the teachers.
The lack of teachers within Clark County School District, they're leaving at a concerning rate. The district has tried to bring in substitutes. They've kind of the threshold's been lowered to allow more people to try and step into the classroom. I guess the first question is that the best way to go about filling the shortage, having people without college degrees essentially help substitute teach? But more importantly, what can be done to get teachers back into the classroom?
I think I was sharing with you earlier, right? I just went to a graduation for Nevada State College, which is a phenomenal institution, and one of the largest groups was in education. So I would say, how is that connection happening? How is dual credit happening in order for us to grow our own? And so those are just some ideas.
We have full interviews with Danielle Ford and Irene Bustamante Adams at 8newsnow.com. They're both very long interviews. A group called the Conservative Coalition has held school board candidate forums. Last week they had candidates for the District D seat, which is held by Trustee President Irene Cepeda. A major concern from the public: increased violence in schools. Cepeda says the district needs long-term solutions to curb the violence. That would include hiring more teachers. Here's how her opponents, Brenda Zamora, Tavora Elliott, Fernando Romero, and Stephen Conger, want to address the issue.
There's a lot of bullying happening. Addressing those bullying issues once they're coming in, I know they're calling safe voices, but sometimes they're not being responsive as quickly as they need to.
What I would do to address that is to increase the officer presence on campus. We need at least 2 officers on campus.
We need to get teachers involved. We need to get parents involved in dealing with the issue. Involving the community, you will lessen the violence.
Different schools have different needs, different disciplinary needs, and part of the problem is those disciplinary decisions have been taken away from those schools, and we need to put those decisions back into the hands.
CCSD says changes have already been made at El Dorado High School, where a teacher was beaten and sexually assaulted, according to police, last month. While the candidates try and earn votes in the public, there is one group working behind the scenes to try and mold the school board. It's called ABC PAC. The organization is led by former school board members Terry Jennison and Sheila Moulton. They say they're focused on trustee demeanor and qualifications, not specific policies. We talked with them about who they're endorsing and why.
In District D, we're going to recommend Irene Cepeda. In District F, we're going to recommend another Irene Bustamante Adams. And in District G, which happens to be my district, we're recommending Greg Wyman.
Okay. What is it about those candidates that stands out to you guys?
So we have some criteria. What we've chosen to do is not focus on specific issues or policies, but we looked at, can the person collaborate? Does the person have the ability to be able to work with others? Do you have an understanding of budgets and of policy? And also, do you have an understanding of what the role of the trustee is? Because I think some people come in and they think, well, I'm going to run and I'm going to just change that whole district. But the role of a trustee is to set policy and regulation and hold the superintendent accountable.
When a vote goes down 4-3, can you work with it even if you don't particularly like it? Have you discussed it, debated it, decided, and then you need to support it? And that's sometimes hard for board members to do.
There's issues of campus safety recently. Obviously, there was the firing and rehiring of the superintendent. There's been a lot going on in and out of the classroom, in and out of the trustees' meetings. From your perspective, what is the direction for the district right now? What is the direction forward?
You got to look at student achievement and student safety. And you've got to engage with the superintendent. Like Terry said, the superintendent is your one go-to man. And I remember years ago a headhunter that came in to help us look for a superintendent and said, you're good individual board members, but you've got to learn to work as a board. And I really think that that's one of the most important things. But we've got to focus on the students. And we haven't seen a lot of that in the board meetings.
We'll have much more coverage of the school board races at Clark County School District in next week's show. Next on Politics Now, separating themselves, how Adam Laxalt and Sam Brown showed differences in their first Republican primary Senate debate. And what happens when Nevada ends its coronavirus state of emergency?
You're never far from Finley.
Welcome back to Politics Now.
Republican Senate candidates Adam Laxalt and Sam Brown faced off in their first and so far only primary debate this week. They appeared on Nevada Newsmakers up in Reno. Brown accused Laxalt of not doing enough to stop election fraud during his time as Nevada's Attorney General.
2020, when President Trump, Nevadans and Americans were relying on you to be the one to challenge any sort of issues with the 2020 election, the only thing you did was to file a lawsuit that, per your own admission, was late.
The Secretary of State in this state is in charge of elections, in charge of investigations, and so, you know, the bottom line, I'm just as disappointed as the next person.
President Trump lost Nevada by more than 33,000 votes in the last presidential election. Nevada Republican Secretary of State Barbara Cegavske also found no evidence of widespread voter fraud in complaints filed by the state Republican Party. One area where the pair disagreed was what to do about inflation. Both blamed current President Biden. Brown wants to aggressively raise interest rates.
When we have a runaway inflation that is the highest it's been in over 40 years, that they should be raising rates at 2.5 points or more immediately to try and combat that.
Washington has a spending problem. It's probably definitely long had a spending problem. But in the last few years, we've seen trillions of dollars come down the pipe. But what is usually left off the equation is COVID. And the Democrats decided to go the shutdown route.
In last week's 8 News Now, the Hill Emerson College poll, Laxalt had a 23-point lead in the primary. The winner of the Republican primary faces incumbent CORTEZ MASTO in the general election. Nevada's COVID-19 state of emergency declaration is being lifted next Friday. Governor Steve Sisolak made the announcement during the week. The emergency's been in effect since the pandemic started more than 2 years ago. There were just 11 positive cases in Nevada at that time. The governor says he is using the time before the order is lifted to make sure there are no service gaps when the state of emergency ends. Nevada's 2 Democratic senators joined Republicans in a measure to end mask mandates for toddlers. Cortez Masto and Jackie Rosen voted with 5 other Democrats to support that Senate resolution this week. Abortion on the front stage. Next on Politics Now, the vote in the Senate on Roe v. Wade and the next steps for Republicans and Democrats. Plus, opposing ranked choice voting, while a coalition of Democrats say they don't want it.
You're watching Politics Now.
A coalition of Democratic groups are campaigning against a ranked choice ballot initiative. The groups say ranked choice voting is complicated, confusing, and can lead to more errors. The ballot initiative would also create open primaries, and supporters believe it encourages more people to vote. If approved, you could vote for anyone in a primary regardless of your registered political party. This week, Nevada's two senators, both Democrats, voted to codify abortion rights from Roe v. Wade. The bill didn't pass. The Women's Health Protection Act only got 49 votes in the Senate. It passed the House. Catherine Cortez Masto and Jackie Rosen supported the measure. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says it is important for lawmakers to stand against conservative Supreme Court justices. Republicans say the bill ignores public opinion.
If the Supreme Court follows through on that decision, it will be the greatest contraction of individual rights in generations.
The American people don't even come close to supporting abortion on demand up until the moment of birth.
Joining us to talk about the failed vote on the Women's Health Protection Act is Alex Limon from Washington, D.C. Senate Democrats, they held a vote trying to protect abortion rights that Americans have exercised for decades. But Alex, the vote was kind of doomed to fail from the start. So why have the vote anyway?
Well, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said that he wanted to get every single senator on the record about where they stand on abortion rights. You know, Democrats say that if the Supreme Court does in fact strike down Roe and the protections it provides, then that would be the biggest contraction of individual rights handed down by the court really ever, as opposed to an expansion of rights. And so Senator Schumer specifically was looking to get people like Senators Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins on the record about this, because they have for years said and campaigned on being pro-choice, yet the two of them said they would oppose this bill and then in fact did vote against the Women's Health Protection Act. And so that was one of the things that Senator Schumer was looking to do. Now keep in mind that even if those two senators had voted with Democrats, there still wasn't enough support for the bill for it to pass in the Senate. Democrat Joe Manchin voted against it, and they just don't have the 60 votes they need to surpass the filibuster.
Does the fact Democrats might not hold a majority much longer create more pressure for the Dems to do something now?
Well, abortion is definitely going to be an election issue. I mean, there is a fair amount of pressure since Democrats hold slim majorities in the Senate, at least, to try to do something now. But realistically, they don't have a large enough majority to be able to do it. Now, does it create pressure, for example, for them to campaign on and maybe win some seats if they think that's a way they can do it? Maybe. On the flip side, you know, I've heard some question whether it creates pressure for them to compromise with Republicans in order to, like you said, get something passed. But the things that Republicans are proposing, for example, Senator Lindsey Graham has a 20-week abortion bill, which would allow abortions up to 20 weeks and then ban them after that, with exceptions for rape and incest if it's reported to police, and also if the mother's health is at risk. I don't know that Democrats see their base as being supportive of a compromise like that. They say they don't see that as a compromise they're willing to make, because they see that more as an abortion ban, a 20-week ban, as opposed to, you know, Roe, which is a legalized abortion more widely.
And that was Alex Limon from Washington, D.C. The first public congressional hearings on UFOs in 50 years. We'll talk about that next on Politics Now.
Days on CBS.
In What to Watch, we're keeping an eye on the first public congressional hearing on UFOs in 50 years. This will take place Tuesday in a House Intelligence Subcommittee hearing. The focus is on the Pentagon's 144-page report on unidentified aerial phenomena. It's a subject we've covered for decades here at Channel 8, of course, where we'll have the highlights of the hearing coming up next week on Politics Now. And Monday night, the Clark County School Board meets to approve its final budget. We're waiting to see if extra money is allocated for school security and teacher pay incentives. We'll have the latest from the school board coming up next week as well. Plus, we'll continue to profile the races for the seats on the Board of Trustees. 3 very interesting races on the horizon. That'll do it for us here on Politics Now. We thank you so much for joining us this week. Stay up to date online with all the political news all across Clark County and across Nevada on 8newsnow.com. We're back with you next Saturday. Take care.